Hello and welcome back to my sewing room. So when my mother, who is like a trained bloodhound for snuffing out fabric at car boot fairs, presented me with a gorgeous piece of Harris tweed, I knew exactly which pattern I wanted to make with it, and it is this one, which in the UK we would call a pinafore dress, but I believe is known as a jumper dress in the United States. And it's a dress from 1941, the exact year that clothing rationing was introduced, and Vogue magazine recommended exactly this style of dress because it's so versatile. You can accessorize it in all kinds of ways. You can vary, obviously, what blouse or jumper that you're going to wear underneath it. So I knew I wanted to use this fabric for this dress, and I also deeply suspected I didn't have enough fabric for it. And not only did I not have enough fabric for it, but the fabric is plaid, which was a very popular wartime era design. And although actually Vogue recommended that you use grey flannel for your pinafore dress, because what could be more versatile than grey flannel. Plaid was also popular, and the plaid that I'm using has a grey base but with olive green and red and a kind of ochre yellow into its gorgeous Harris tweed. What could be more era appropriate than trying to make this dress with not enough fabric and having to pattern match the plaid at the same time? So let's see how I get on. The hardest part of making this dress was definitely cutting out the pattern pieces from not enough fabric in plaid. So I got the dress back to sit nicely on the fold, the dress side back and the dress side front, all laid out with the plaid stripes matching, and I got the facings all right. My problems were the lower dress and upper dress fronts, so quite vital pieces. That's the lower dress front. I'm showing you can see at the ends how much fabric I had left. So just to remind you of the pattern, the lower dress front, there was actually, you need two pieces and you join them in the centre. And then the dress front is that sort of narrow strip above that wide lower skirt front. So here I'm just matching one side of the lower skirt front to the side skirt front. So for one part I could make up the piece that's needed out of only two pieces of the plaid, just joining them about halfway up across, and obviously cutting a little bit of extra fabric for the seam I'm going to have to make. And I'm just checking there that the grain line is absolutely straight, which is so important, particularly for plaid. So that's one piece cut out for, well, one piece cut in two pieces for the lower skirt front, and then I've just pinned those together to make a seam. So then onto my second lower skirt front, and I've got these two pieces, but as you can see the upper piece isn't wide enough, so I'm having to find some strips to add to it. And placing the lower skirt front I've already done, just level with the skirt side front. I just wanted to also have a look at the upper front of the dress and try to work out how I'm going to have enough fabric to cut that. I've got this piece that you can see, but I can't put it there because the plaid doesn't match, so that needs to be moved up, but then there isn't enough fabric. That is the size of the upper dress front. So now I'm going to have to look at the scraps I have left and start a little jigsaw puzzle to try to work out how I can cut all the pieces I need out of the fabric I've got, piecing them as obviously as little as possible. And I realised the best thing to do for the upper dress front was to use these two kind of strips, and rather than cut that piece on the fold, just cut it twice and with a central seam, and then so you can see how I'm matching there. That's kind of one part that will go on to one dress front, and then the other one will fit like that with a central seam, and I think that will work out all right. And then I did another check just to make sure that the dress centre front pieces would align absolutely with the dress side front pieces, and then it was onto the lower skirt of the dress, and I had the one piece that was made out of two pieces, and that's all stitched and pressed, and I've just put that in position. And then I had to do this jigsaw puzzle with the second lower skirt front of the dress. So I've got these two pieces pinned together, but not enough width around the top of the piece, so I'm positioning the strips of fabric I have left, and that's what I've got, and I'm going to stitch all those pieces together and then press the seams flat, and then I will be able to get this lower dress front piece cut from that pieced fabric. And the front facing was the only thing that I just couldn't pattern match, but it is going to be on the inside of the dress, and this is what I was left with. Just this few little scraps. Then I went round all the edges of the pieces with my overlocker, or serger as you in the United States would call it, and I say that with pride because it's quite new to me, my overlocker serger, and it's quite a step forward into the modern world for me, and I actually managed to thread it up and use it, which I'm sure you've all been doing for years, but for me in my vintage machines I was quite proud of myself. So what I'm doing here is pinning the pleats onto the lower centre front of the dress, and there are two pleats either side of the centre front, and they're marked really clearly on the pattern, and they just fold in towards the centre, and you stitch not all the way down but just like a few inches down each side, and then also just a few inches down at the centre front, but stopping and then going up along the other side to create two rows of stitching either side the centre front. And then that's how the upper dress front is going to fit onto the dress. And to do that, you turn under the lower edge of the upper dress front and press it, and then the sides of the front there are just done as a normal seam, but the lower part is turned under and top stitched on to form a lap seam. And I've also made up the facing, as you can see. That's the only bit I can't be proud of, but it is going to be inside the dress, and then that just is stitched around the neckline of the dress and then turned round to the wrong side and then slip stitched into position. Then, as you can see, I'm back onto my old vintage Singer sewing machine, back in my comfort zone, and it's now just a case of stitching the pleats, and this machine goes nice and slowly at kind of my speed, so stitching the pleats and then stitching all the seams, and they've already been finished with the overlock serger, so it was just a case of plodding along doing all my stitching. And the fabric was quite heavy. It did sort of pull down a bit, so I had to give it a bit of a helping hand along underneath the foot, because the weight of it was inclined to sort of pull it kind of back towards my lap. And the machine that I'm using, it's the old brown 201K Singer sewing machine. This actually belonged to my mother, and she made all my childhood dresses on it, so it's a real old friend, another old sewing friend like Foxy, who's kind of peering at me from underneath it. And it's time for the reveal, and I'm wearing a winter woolly underneath it. I made the dress quite loose. I might tighten it up a little, but probably not much of it all, because it's a heavy Harris tweed, really thick, and it's definitely a winter dress, and it's nice to feel I can put some chunky knits on underneath it if I need to, which I think I will in the coming months. But the pattern itself did show the pinafore jumper dress with a blouse, and actually the blouse is included with the pattern, but I didn't have the fabric or time to make it. But I am wearing underneath it, just to show you what it looks like with a blouse, a true vintage 40s silk blouse, which actually has little shoulder pads, and I've done a little 40s look with the crocheted gloves and kind of matching beret, and you can see that the plaid matches all the way round. So another little look that's bringing out the olive green stripes in the dress, and then the grey. You can see I haven't got over my felt flower making, wearing them a lot on with everything. And even though this is a real 40s look, this dress, in a way, it's quite a classic, isn't it? I think you could wear it, you know, quite easily today, and you wouldn't look like you're in costume or anything. But it really does still also conform to the 1940s kind of make do and mend principle of using every scrap of fabric and having a real kind of wardrobe staple. This kind of dress, you can wear it in so many different ways. It's just me kind of making myself dizzy to show you that the plaid matched all the way round. And of course the furry friends have come to wave goodbye. I hope that you will like this video and consider subscribing. Thank you for watching. Bye.